Hiya, welcome to 2023. Is it the future or is it the past? Well, it depends on when you're listening. It is episode 94 and we're talking about science fiction film Radius, which came out in 2017.
From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Radius was written and directed by Caroline Labrèche and Steeve Léonard, but I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right because these fabulous duo are Canadians and it might be French Canadians maybe.
It looks a bit that way.
Caroline, Steve, if you're out there, correct me, let us know what you were intending to do with Radius.
Okay, this is your spoiler warning. Turn back now if you've not seen Radius because we're going to go through everything.
Everything. Warning.
So watch it and then tune back in.
Warning.
Warning.
All right, in Space Brains, episode 94, we're going to get stuck into what we call Act 1. So the synopsis of Radius is a man wakes up with no memory of who he is and finds that everyone who comes within a certain distance of him suddenly dies. It's a horrific premise when you read that little synopsis on the back of the VHS back in Blockbuster days or, you know, on the streaming services. It is kind of quite horrifying, and it does make me want to watch it and find out what how does this guy get around if everyone is dying around him? What was your number one takeaway from Radius? Sorry,
my number one takeaway from Radius is that birds are less valuable than people.
Totally. Agree.
I'm going to assume they humanely created fake birds. It didn't say.
Bought dead birds. You can buy dead birds.
Can you buy dead birds?
Yeah, science. I think science. Scientists buy it to experiment. You can buy dead rats.
And goats.
Well, I don't know if the goat was actually... Because you didn't quite see the goat die. You saw it like plop
down. So maybe it was like a guy in a goat costume or a couple of cats.
I think there's a couple of clever shots there that Caroline and Steve
I think so. In the past, I had this strange feeling they would have just killed the goat.
Yeah, I
would just kill it, you know.
Yeah, just kill it for TV purposes. We'll eat it on... Cast will eat it.
Cast will eat it, yeah. Like they're not being paid otherwise.
No,
I mean, why
right.
not? It's part of our catering budget.
But I think birds, you could probably get fake-looking good, you know, like good birds. Or I reckon you could... I mean, the science community that listen to Space Brains, can you get dead birds off the internet?
Yeah, let's see. There was a couple of crows and it's the pigeons that were particularly convincing to me, that kind of, because that, like, you see that the people die, and within the context of the film you kind of go, ooh, that's horrifying, but you know that they're just actors who are falling, like I think I'm going to, I mean, Steve and Carolyn, get in touch, because if in fact you did murder hundreds of people to make this film, I think maybe you should probably let me know.
No, sorry, it's called acting.
I think it was acting. But it's very hard to get birds. Like, they were very convincing looking
they were dead
bodies.
birds. They were either dead birds or fake birds. They were.
They didn't look fake.
No.
That's what I actually found quite disturbing in this, is like, oh yeah, okay, guy walks towards and falls down dead. Ooh, that would be a terrible thing. But then he's like, he steps back on the bridge and a couple of pigeons drop on the ground at his feet, and you're like, they look really real. That's actual dead animals there.
The Canadians are a well-known hunting population, like the Americans, versus us in Australia. We don't, you know, most of us don't really hunt. I mean, some people do, but they are into their guns and their shooting of animals in Canada. So, I mean, maybe it's acceptable to shoot a few birds out of the sky.
Look, I don't know.
For a film, I don't know. Who knows?
Perhaps there was just some euthanized pigeons from a culling program.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, they found, like, collected a couple that had banged into windows or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, you can get dead rats and mice and stuff for science reasons. I think you could get dead pigeons, but I also, if you're a prop maker out there, I mean, do you make dead birds? That'd be something I'm interested in.
It's what I really took away from this. That's
your number one takeaway.
That was my number one takeaway because it was just, I looked at it going, that's not CG.
No, they were real, weren't they? Yeah.
They looked really real. They had a real
fur to them.
Heavy feeling, the feather and the movement when they plopped on the ground was very realistic.
I will say the crow that drops down, because you can train a crow to do stuff, right?
Yes.
So like an animal trainer, the shot was cleverly done in that as he walked towards the crow, it actually just dived down. So that would have been a trained crow.
Yeah.
But then they did cut to a shot of a dead crow on the ground.
Well, that could have just been a, what do you call it, taxidermy job.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, crows do just die, and then you can just like stuff one and stick on the ground.
I mean, we have a lot of roadkill around here, so.
Okay, well, here's an interesting one, because this film, again, some of the best films, you have to toss up what exactly it is. Is this a hope, warning, or an experiment?
And I toyed about this, but I am actually going to go hope. And so hope is, the story is ultimately a story that presents hope for mankind. And my reason being that Radius is hopeful is basically the fact that the main character is a serial killer.
Yeah.
Before this incident.
We did give that spoiler warning.
Yeah, we did warn everyone. And so then in this version where he's got no memory, he's actually the hero, and he helps, and he tries to help people, and he actually doesn't want people to die. So to me, there was kind of like an essential part of the story here that humans can be good, even if they were kind of the most evil, which he, we end up finding out that he is.
Yeah.
And he really didn't want to, all those people that were coming to him, he really strained. There's 3 or 4 scenes in this film where, he does his very, very best once he knows that he's going to kill people to avoid killing people.
Yeah.
And it's more that society doesn't listen to him. So I felt like it was hopeful. And then even the fact of the way the film ends, that he does kill himself, that he kind of is sacrificing himself for the greater good of everyone.
Which is the only sacrifice you can make. Any of these films where they sort of say, I must now sacrifice you, does that mean you're like, well, that's not a sacrifice.
No, that's not really
called murder.
Yes, yeah. Well, the hero should always, be willing to sacrifice. We don't want them to.
You have to give something personal up to sacrifice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not a sacrifice.
So I saw hope in that story, I think.
Because I was looking at the experiment side of things. It's not a warning. It's not warning us against anything. But I thought, it's kind of, it sets this premise. What if someone just had a death radius?
Yeah.
Like literally.
That's a cool idea.
Because it really was just an embodiment of his serial killing nature, wasn't it? It was like he did have a death radius.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, if you mapped out the missing people, it probably formed a radius around that town or something.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, okay, well, now literally we're going to show you that you are a radius of death.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of an experiment, but
definitely
all the way up until the very end, where, as you said, it does, through his death, it becomes hopeful. Yeah, I think up until that point, I was sort of going, no, I don't know, but there wasn't much hope there, and then at the very end, I think it pulls it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think some of the better films are like that. They're not just clearly one way or the other until you sort of really think about them.
Yeah.
Have a bit of a look.
And it's a great what if. That's what I mean. If you read that synopsis, that what if, the writers have gone for that, what if someone had a death radius? What would happen? It's real clear, when we get to fun and games, isn't it? It's like, well, what would happen if someone had a death radius? It's such a simple caveman, you can understand it straight away. And I remember distinctly when I said to you, let's do this film, you had that primal reaction. You were kind of like a bit of a grunt, knowing what that synopsis was. Yeah, that sounds a bit horrifying. That's what you think.
You're also sort of thinking, how does that turn out to anything other than just misery?
That's right. So how straight away there's a bunch of questions. How are they going to navigate that? And so it's a really cool premise, and I think it's a great example for any writer out there of a good what if that makes someone want to know, well, how does that play out? And how does that actually operate, and why would that happen, and how would they navigate that? So, and we'll come to a bit more of the story in a minute. This was my first time? Was it your first time?
Oh, absolutely first time. I'd never heard of this before. As it turns out, I looked it up after the fact, watching it.
Yep.
And it's got pretty good ratings on the old Rotten Tomatoes, and not a lot of reviews, but they're all positive.
Yeah, and Caroline and Steve, especially Caroline, she's actually done a lot of short film and TV productions in Canada as well. Steve's done a couple. These two have worked on a couple of productions together, including this one. And so, obviously, looking at Caroline in particular's resume on IMDb, there is quite an extensive TV Canadian film production experience there. So we were put in the hands of people that really know what they're doing, and I think it's such a tight framed, clearly well-defined story, and then really just, where as an audience, we're just kind of like chucked on the ride straight away and we go for that journey. So for me, it really was a great film just to kind of sit down and watch. It's that 90-minute kind of film, which I always love. So you're just kind of in and you hit those beats and you're following and you want to know what happens. And did you have a favourite scene? Sorry, apart from birds falling out of the sky.
Well, I absolutely had a favourite scene.
Yeah.
And my favourite scene was the elevator ride in the hospital.
Oh, yeah. Cool scene.
Because this is definitely in that fun and games, was into the fun and games section, where they're at the hospital to get the brain scan and they're heading to just leave, and you think, okay, they're just going to leave, and they head out, and then old Rose, or I think she was still known as Jane at that point, stopped to see the missing persons board, and then Liam gets into the elevator, and you're like, oh, hold on, surely he'll just stop. No, and it's closing, and the realization that they're in the middle of this hospital. In fact, the elevator itself is packed. Yeah, they're in the middle of a hospital, so there's lots of people packed around them in a radius.
It's quite terrifying.
And the thought that it's just going to be this elevator of death, floor to floor to floor, killing everyone around him. And so she had to run for it. And they'd already shown they're quite willing to, a whole diner full of people dead. Yeah. The tractor dude just walks up and just drops dead. The police officer woman, who's then child, mum. And you're like, oh my God, no, what's going on? And so, it's like, you thought the stakes were harsh. Well, okay, they've overcome this, like she's going, I'm getting out of here. And the police officer dies. And so she goes, I can't. And now they go, okay, that's some stakes. But now what we have to do is she's decided to say, but what if there are scenarios where they don't get that choice? Where they are broken apart.
That's right.
And here is one of such things, and it's this great chase scene. And it's a great way of injecting action and drama and thrills in a movie, movie that otherwise is relatively low action. Yeah. Like it's a lot of psychological stuff going on here, but they have this chase, an elevator chase, where she's running down the stairs and he's like looking, but she's not there, and he's like,
do I go up? Do I go down?
He's going like, I just got to get out of the hospital, basically. So that was very good. I found that very thrilling because the filmmakers had shown they were willing to mass murder, which but I thought, it'd be pretty dark in a hospital.
Yeah, and I think the stakes were raised there because, as you said, there was a bunch of people in the elevator with him, and these people are sick. One was in, I think, a wheelchair. One was in, so it was the opposite of Save the Cat, wasn't it? Because it was like, oh, if you stay in this elevator with this dude, he's going to kill you. But even then, we know the radius is, I don't know what it was, 15 meters or whatever it was, not very far from between the two characters, that then people are just going to be dropping dead. And these poor people are in the hospital. They're kind of locked in a box, aren't they, in an elevator. So, I felt the same in that scene, that my heart started to race a bit, that it's like, you're locked in with these people.
Yeah, I thought it was a really clever way of introducing that action and drama and like this, like having like a set piece in the middle, which wasn't guns shooting and fight scenes or anything like that. It was just this very tense moment that I was on the edge of my seat going, ooh, what's going to happen here? Yes. It reminded me of the I Am Legend scene where his dog runs off into the darkness and he's got to follow the dog through. Because he's not going to die, but the dog
could die.
Like they may well have included this dog just to kill it.
That's right.
So that we can get the stakes. Yeah. And it sort of does happen that way. Yeah. But in this one here, it's like, oh, don't know. This was a great scene. How about you? Did you have any favourite scene other than that one?
Well, I must admit, I really liked just that start of this story and how that he kind of is, it's such a, there's an accident straight away and we only see that in a couple of shots, and then his bafflement of it, and then walking down the road and a car's coming and he's kind of signalling this car and the car just veers off the road and crashes kind of thing as well, like a minor crash, and the woman's dead. And I thought, oh, wow, like this is a great way of just starting this story and the stakes are raised straight away, because I knew what the question of the film was from reading the synopsis. So it's like, okay, yeah, this guy, everything he touches is going to die, you know, and I thought the filmmakers were really brave to, in the first 2 minutes, we've seen that. So
I was going, oh, what sort of inciting incident are you going to, like, we've already got this occurrence, like, because you could imagine an opening image where he's driving, the establishment of character and
who he is, all that stuff.
And then at about the 12-minute mark, that's when he has a car accident and wakes up and starts killing people. And you go, that's inciting incident.
Yeah,
but here we're straight in, 2 minutes in.
And I mean, there's reason for that, which we find out. But I liked that was the, bam, straight into it. And I just thought that was a really clever way that, they did that female driver, and then you just mentioned the farmer was like 5 minutes later. So it was really establishing, that, he has this death radius.
And it wasn't a gentle one.
No, it wasn't a gentle one, and there was no way out of it. And, so I really liked that. I mean, there's a couple other good scenes, like the hospital scene and the police coming to get them and separating them scene, and, some other really great scenes. But I just personally, I really liked how this film started because I thought, hey, you're giving us everything that we really want to just keep watching it.
Yeah, straight in on it.
Is this a science fiction film, Surrey?
Well, it would be easy to say that, in fact, it's kind of not. But I would suggest...
But we're doing it on our podcast.
I would say, yeah, I know. Well, we also did The Dish, which,
Yeah. Don't tell anyone.
It's science fiction.
It's science.
But this
fiction.
one here... I would put it in there because what we're dealing with here is we're taking a scientific concept regarding who you are.
Yep.
Is it nature or nurture? What can define us, and how can we? Is it possible to make amends? Can we change the way the world sees us or how we operate? So that's like, it's a real psychology, sociology thing here, and it's used. It's not defined exactly what happened. Like this lightning strike comes from just a glowing orb above the Earth. Like we have no other context about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So you could easily interpret that as being a religious, spiritual thing, or some sort of an aliens thing, or maybe the whole world is continuously monitored experiment. I don't know. Like it's left entirely out of it. So that sort of is where you can sort of say it's not terribly science fiction. But I think here they've taken this premise of who you are, your identity, and how you act, and then they've introduced this extreme fiction element. So we've got the science, now the fiction element comes in and says, well, let's set this up and play out an example. And the message was hope in this case.
Yeah.
And they played it out. So, yeah, you'd be struggling... and I think the sciencey element really is the fact that if you didn't have that lightning flash from some mysterious alien object, you'd be going, that's just not how amnesia works. That's not how any of this works. Like, you've got that, loss of premise. You're trying to explain it away as just some sort of love thing or magic thing. And you're like, ugh. But in this case, it just like went, no, go with us here.
Yeah.
Something did just happen and it has caused this effect.
Yeah.
Now let's go with it.
But isn't the the fiction in the science, the fact of a person that could walk around and kill people at a distance? Like that was the thing that he debates, and when Jane comes on the scene, and he tells her, when he does actually tell her freak, oh, you're going to do it to me? What are you going to do? And he's like, I'm not doing anything. So isn't part of the fiction, the science fiction in this, the fact of like a person having that ability? Because as humans, we don't have that ability. Yeah,
that's that premise where they say, this is just the situation we're going to set up. The cause of it was this mysterious.
Well, it's a hand. It could be anything. A hand of God, an alien, whatever.
Thing happened.
Yeah.
You
need a sequel. That's what you need to find that.
But it's definitely because they never introduced any spiritual or magical.
No. The rest of the world was very real.
In fact, they were going, let's go to the scientists.
Yeah.
Let's get scans. Let's talk to NASA.
Yeah.
Like, so
doctors. Blah,
so
blah,
I think the filmmaker said, look, let's not go into the world of magic here. We're gonna keep this in the realm of science reality, as it were.
Yeah.
And we'll just go with it.
And I think there was mention really briefly on one of the headlines, something like a cosmic lightning ray or something, a NASA
cosmic event.
A cosmic event, you know, so that's what the writers have put it down to. And but I mean, again, I like this because it's a hand of God. That's kind of the writer's term here. Like the writer is the God and gone, well, how can this what if happen? Oh, he just gets electrocuted from the sky, you know, okay. Well, no one's ever had that from lightning. Well, what if the lightning came from space?
Yeah, just some glowing thing in space, and it's just.
And we're not gonna. It's not Independence Day where we're gonna find out it's an alien spaceship. It's just literally an anomaly in space. Whatever, right?
You can come up with whatever explanation you so chose.
So I like that, and I think it's a interesting. I think that what if says a lot, and I do think it's in that science realm because the sci-fi realm, because as humans we can't walk around and just zap people dead. And we're not Harry Potter where we're doing wishes and wands and, you know, spells and whatever, right? Like where he wasn't doing that. He had no actual control of it. So I do think it is a really clever sci-fi. So go check it out and we'll get into some more details in Act 2. But just before that, Surrey is a published science fiction author. What creative sci-fi related materials are you putting out into the ether soon, if not now?
Yes, well, I've
what's the plan of action?
Yes, I'm writing an additional 20,000 words on my novel.
New writing, which
stopped too soon.
Yep,
like it got through its plot points too quickly.
Yep,
and so I said prior to this, I ran through all the chapters I'd written and
awesome.
Worked out what purpose they served, the story, and I had to rejig one of the enemies in there around. It was a side enemy. I'm going to make them the primary one because they make a much better primary enemy, and sort of change that a little bit. I'm also then I sadly attempted a bit of romantic interaction in this novel. Turns out that I'm really, really not good at that. Asked my wife, and somehow I got a wife. So that will be coming along.
You need a bit of romance. You need to read a bit of Twilight or something, don't you? 50 Shades of Grey.
Well, you see, the problem is my brain just doesn't work that way. I cannot even. So what I'm going to do is, the problem is the way my brain does work. When you write it down and read it back, it's like this person's not right.
Well, maybe a listener out there or listeners could message Surrey some romantic ideas, things to do, and he could just use them on his wife, not in a book, but you know he could just take the lead.
Don't get too intimate in your descriptions here.
No. I'm just saying those ideas, those big picture ideas. I'm thinking here, Surrey, because this book idea was something you had a bit developed, and then now you left it, and then you've gone back to it. How are you finding that process of coming back to a project? Is it harder, do you think, than maybe writing something just from scratch and doing the words? Or do you actually think it's good because the fundamentals are there?
The harder bit is trying to remember how to get back into the characters. So when I'm writing it the first time, I'm feeling the character and I'm writing as if, you know, from their point of view.
Yeah, awesome.
And now I'm reading it back and going, I've got to remember what it was I was doing here. But the good side of it is there are portions that I read are a bit cringy, like some of my efforts of the romance, what have you. But there are other bits there, like there's a slightly comical interlude there where a fellow goes to a sheep station entirely populated by men named Martin.
Okay. Which is interesting. Need to read.
There's Martin and his son Martin. Yeah. Anyway, it's... There's a little funny story about why all the men are called Martin, and anyway, so that's quite good. I read that, and when I read that back, I went, "Yep, that's actually quite amusing." That is, it's not outrageous, like it makes sense in the world.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's kind of a little bit, what a quirky sort of little outback thing that would be.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple other sort of parts that were genuinely creepy, and a few choice turns of phrase and metaphors that I use. I thought, I actually came up with some good stuff here. Some of it's written really well. I should just steer clear of trying to get in the heads of romantic people.
There's something to be said for writing in the what I would call like the creative zone. So you've kind of got the idea, it's pumping through you, whether you're seeing it from a character's point of view, or maybe it's almost like you're the god over the whole world and you can just see all the characters as kind of like pieces on a chessboard. But for me, there's times where it's all encompassing, and there's something to be said about that. But then there's also something to be said about you've written a bit of a draft and then actually going back and, rewording and rewriting. And there's a couple of those expert, well-published authors, the big authors out there. I won't name names right now, but they talk a lot about, the difference between a beginning writer and an actual published writer is the one that's willing to go back and edit the draft and do it again.
And realise that a part is just not right.
Yeah, realising a part's not right, but realising, as you just said, there's actually bits that are good, or there's bits that are worth saving, or there's bits that might just need a bit more twerking, tweaking, whatever, but they're there. Yeah.
Bit more twerking.
Twerking, get the twerking.
I'm going to put that in there. I'll put some twerking in there.
That's how you get romance. Sorry.
Romance.
Bit of twerking. Get Martin twerking with Martin.
He stood up. He stood up from looking at the dead body and twerked.
That's right.
Maishi thought, "What a strong twerker he is."
That's right. Showing off his twerking.
As it was actually, yeah. Anyway, I won't go into some of the weirdo stuff I was getting into. No twerking, but there were dead bodies.
And you know what? Another thing there is write the weird shit, man. Write the weird shit, I reckon.
Yeah.
The weirder, the better.
You got to have some strange stuff in there. Well, I've got my other story there, which I've written about 3/4 of, which is a little bit more sort of weird cyberpunk sort of stuff going on.
Well, just on that, Quentin Tarantino, there's a quote from him saying something like, "Write stuff that will make you embarrassed." And I think what he means is write the weird stuff that you're writing it and you're like, "Ooh, I don't know if I should let the public know I think this or I know this," and if you think about some of Tarantino's films, that's what he's done and people love it.
Yeah, well, okay.
Goes to the weird.
I shan't pretend to be Tarantino, but I shall take a stab at it. And yourself, looking over your film that you're putting together, trying to get, I think you called it a budget-friendly filmable film.
Yeah, so that's taken another step in that my writing of it is progressing, which is really great. So I kind of got the beat board and I've got all those ideas laid out on the beat board now, which I'm really excited about. And I think I really do now know what, like we've said, this film is about hope. I think what's happened as I've laid out the story a bit more formally is that I now know really what the story's about.
Right.
And I can visualize the bits. I'm really kind of excited about the lead character as well. I like where my brain has kind of gone with her. And pretty much the advice I was just saying to you is I do want it to go a bit weird. I do want her to get a bit weird and funky.
Is she going to twerk?
She might have to twerk now that we're talking. I don't know. Hadn't thought about twerking, but maybe that's a weird character trait, isn't it? If someone just twerks.
It's scene, night, interior.
That's right.
Jasmine twerks to the twerks to the kitchen and picks up an apple.
Yeah, that's right.
Imagine the poor actress reading that going, I'm sorry, she does what? Twerks.
That's what I want to see.
To the kitchen counter.
We're going to do this a few times, honey.
See if you can manage to twerk across the room.
That's right. I want you to twerk to get the apple. Yes.
Yeah, you really want that apple.
You do. It's in the twerking. That will reveal that. So, yeah, I'm happy that that's taken another step. Also thinking of a short experimental mobile film that I might want to do later this year, like a short film, and just kind of, crossing the boundaries a bit. Like I've got an idea that I think could be a little bit horrific, and I think it could be just, and maybe actually it's funny to think of that as a short film would actually be a really great place to experiment with it. So that, because the idea I've had you could maybe potentially make it into a bigger story, but it'd be interesting to experiment in the short form. So that it's still in its infancy, that idea, but an idea has come to me that I think might work. And like here we do the Spacebrains Film Festival. There's also the WA Made Festival, and they have a specific mobile phone category.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might be something that just as a bit of a aim that I actually do that for that. And yeah, I know there's other film festivals around the world that do mobile, so you could just say, yeah, why not experiment in that zone and have a bit of just to take the pressure off it, trying to be cinematic and just going a bit more the actually leaning into mobile phone footage. So that's what I mean by that, like experimenting a bit with it. So yeah, a couple of things on the burner, and also wanting to define Mark Regan, the filmmaker, a bit more. And so, yeah, I'm doing a bit of creative process around that at the moment. So, yeah, there's probably a bit of shifting of the sands in that zone as well.
Great work. And we have a 2023 film festival.
Yeah.
There's lots of entries. They're still coming in. We're into our late submission period.
We are.
We've got some, we're organising some workshops at the moment.
Yeah, we're into that phase.
Yeah, just waiting to hear back from a proposal for a sci-fi writer who will give us a bit more of a hands-on experiment process workshop this time, so that we can get some real work in there.
Yeah, I think I'll sit there and take notes.
Yeah, I'll be cracking along that too.
Yep.
And organising our location for screenings. So that'll be good too.
So if you're thinking of making a film, now you got to get cracking. Now there's not sort of, we were joking last year about, you take a bit of time, get it in, the sooner you get in, you save money. Now it's the other way. Now you got to get it going.
Yeah, hopefully you're in post-production right now.
Yeah, hopefully you're more in the editing phase, especially by the time you hear this episode. It might be even closer to that final date. So you got a couple of months, and although that might sound like a long time, it's not in filmmaking. So get moving now, unless you're going to run out with a camera and shoot the solar eclipse and that's part of your film or something, I don't know. So, but make it happen. We'd love to see it. Submit your film now and get a chance to see it on the big screen. So let's move into Act 2 of the episode.
I choose Act 2.
I do. We choose to zone over into Act 2 and take the journey, Surrey. Hopefully, if you're listening, you're going to take it with us.
And we're going to get stuck into some of the filmmaking language and some of the plot and some of the devices and techniques. I know there's a couple of motifs and themes that I'd like to pull out in this film. Yeah. There's a couple of really cool shots. We're also going to look over, the structure of the whole thing.
Yep. So we did mention before Caroline and Steeve, the writer-director. They've worked on a couple of things previously. Caroline's done a whole bunch of stuff. The lead in this is also Diego Klattenhoff, who plays Liam Hartwell. He's been in a whole bunch of US TV and stuff. I think Homeland, he was in Homeland as one of the main characters. And yeah, you look him up on IMDb, he's got a very exhaustive list. And so does Charlotte Sullivan, who plays Jane/Rose. Again, she's been in a couple of big TV shows. The one is slipping my brain right now, unfortunately. But
Slipping My Brain, that'd be a good TV show name, wouldn't it?
Slipping My Brain is the lead. She's the lead in that. And Brett Donner, who plays her husband as well. So again, as a writer, this is one of those ones. It's really two characters and a bit of a third one.
Yeah.
And everyone else is really a minor character.
Everyone else just dies.
Everyone else dies or walks into death, basically. And it was filmed in
Manitoba,
which is a province of the Canadian lands.
Canadian land.
That's right. Hey. I love a good Canadian land. Interesting location. I thought that there was this very familiar feeling to those dirt roads with the power lines. It reminded me of locally to here. I reckon we could almost shoot the same. It's just the greenery is a bit different.
Yeah, we don't have so much greenery.
No, it's much dry, but we have that dirt road and the power line.
Power line, dirt road.
Yeah, like we have that same vibe. And I also liked that then the town and the bridges they used, it just had a bit of a different feel to what we see out of a lot of the US productions. You know, it felt like we were off the beaten track a bit, and I liked that. It was quite an interesting world that he lived in, and there's a reason for that, as we know, that we'll come to in a minute. So let's break it down, the key parts of the plot, and we'll talk about some of those other filmic elements as we go throughout. Basically, we like to break the narrative down into some key beats which make up a structure of then a entire story, or what we might call a good story. If you look at all the big writing teachers that have been around, you can go back, there's a whole bunch of them. There's a whole bunch specifically for script writing as well that we refer to, people like Campbell, Snyder, McKee, and Field are some really good household names in the script writing world. If you don't know them, go Google them. They've all written best-selling books on how to write a screenplay, and there's other ones out there, but essentially it is setting up that all good films have a 3-act structure, and then those 3 acts are broken down into key moments or beats or scenes, and those scenes are set up in a particular way to get the audience from the beginning to all the way to the end, and hopefully have a very satisfying experience whilst watching.
And I think one of the good ways of thinking about these sort of beats or points is that they are the things that drive the story forward. They make the next part of the story make sense to the earlier parts.
Correct.
And that's how you can tell a well-written story, movie or novel or whatever it is, compared to one that's maybe been a bit rushed or lacking in effort or something, is that you get from point A to point B, but you don't feel like there's a real need or reason to be at point B. So how do we do that? So we're talking about an Act 1 structure.
Yes. And
here we have, for example, an opening image, a bit of establishment. We introduce characters. So we could well imagine an overhead like drone shot, which is nice for setting up loneliness. If you look at a lot of horror films, they do the overhead drone shot following a car through the hills or something. Sort of sets that up. So we have an overhead drone shot of a man and a dog trailing slightly behind him. And we just sort of follow that along. There's a quiet, bit of wind blowing, a tumbleweed, which is, there's always a tumbleweed, or the filmic equivalent, whatever the thematic equivalent is at the place, is to have something moving through that represents lack of other people, like a bit of newspaper or a leaf or something, or a plastic bag.
Or a feather, like Forrest Gump.
Or a feather. Yeah, a feather. So that's sort of the introduction. We have this thing. Then we're going to move straight in and look at the inciting incident. And I like the inciting incident because that's the point in the movie, right at the start, where you go, oh, okay, this is what we're sort of going to, the journey we're going to go on is this. Or it's probably going to be this.
Yeah.
Even if it is someone different. But you need to have established early on about, we often say about the 12-minute mark, 12 to 15 minutes, depending on how big bang this is.
Yes.
But you need to grab, by that point there, you need to tell the audience, this is what the film's about. Mm-hmm. So get ready for something cool.
Yeah.
And in this case here, you got the guy walking through the plains, dusty plains, with a dog walking behind him, driving over the top. You can see there's no one else around him. He's walking along, and then we get a couple of encounters where he stops at a water hole. He goes and, picks over some trash, a broken down car. But then he'll be walking through the plains, and then there'll be footprints crossing in front of him. And this whole time we've never seen any. It's been very well established that he's in a world that is empty. It is desolate, and it's just him and his dog.
Yeah.
And then he sees footprints. And this is the inciting incident because it leads to the debate. He will stop. And he'll go, oh, do I follow these things? And maybe he talks to his dog and says, hey, dog, do we follow that? Or are they going to try and kill us? We came across those cannibals before.
And
yeah, and so now you've got this debate. It's like, and as the audience, you go, oh, he's definitely going to follow them. Like, we know that. Like, it would be a very short and boring film if you went, nah, okay. Yeah. And you just trundle off into the desert again. You go, oh. But instead, so he has a bit of a debate there. He has to maybe even... he's going to walk off, but then dog whimpers. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, you're right. We've got to find out what's going on here. Or maybe, actually, here's a better one. He is about to walk off, and he takes one last look at the tracks and notices that one of the tracks is child's track.
Yeah.
And there's some drops of blood.
Yeah.
And he goes, ooh, suddenly. And as the audience, you know what this movie's going to be about now.
Yeah.
He's going to track this, and is either going to save them or help them, or it's going to be a vampire. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's going to be exciting. And that's where he goes, okay, debate's over. I'm following this. It's been made up. And he goes on. And that breaks us into Act 2.
Yeah, so Act 2 is basically that we'd take that setup, take that journey, the character's going to go on it, and we can call that like the fun and games. And quite often this is like the trailer of the film. So in this example that Surrey's been setting up, we've got a character and he finds these people, but when he finds them, it's not what he expected. So maybe he can't find that bleeding child, and in fact this what he finds is a ruthless gang of murderous, torturous, Mad Max end of the world style people who capture him and tie him up and sacrifice him to some false god, and he has to escape that, and the whole time he's looking for this bleeding child, but in fact they never had the child.
No.
But the child went off on a different direction, and so then he follows that, and he comes across the fact that there's another group of humans that are actually extremely, nature driven, and they've got a little protected garden that's hidden from the terroristic kind of people out there, and they kind of take him in, and he starts to get peace with the land. But what it turns out is that they're really kind of falsifying their serenity, and there's some sort of leader that, I don't know, rapes and pillages all the people in the village, and he's the next sacrifice to the dictator.
Dear.
And so he has to escape from that. But then maybe he can escape, but not his dog.
Oh no!
To raise the stakes.
This is we're hitting a midpoint.
The dog. He can get out of the gate, or the dog gets eaten alive and ripped apart by this dictator thing or whatever, right?
Oh, you have a touching moment where the dog sacrifices itself,
the dog actually sacrifices itself so that he can get free and just gets out the gate, whatever, right, from these people. The thing is, these people were well resourced, so maybe they're going to actually now they eat the dog or whatever.
Oh well, yeah.
They
KFD,
whatever they do with the dog, but they decide to actually hunt him down and leave their gate. So they go out and they start hunt. So he's got his bit of a chase sequence here that the bad guys are
closing in on
him, because they're coming after him as they go, and he's and now he's got no supplies. Maybe like Die Hard left his shoes at the camp, so he's barefoot out in this desert terrain.
Because they asked him to experience the grass under his toes.
That's right.
He hasn't seen grass in years, not since he was a kid, so he took his shoes off for sure.
That's it. So he's real, and he's got no supplies, got no water, whatever. So he's really in the terrain, and whilst he's in the terrain, there's maybe some sort of also, I don't know, snake. He gets bitten by a snake.
Oh, yes, because this is one of the things after that midpoint, and the bad guys are closing.
You've just got to get worse. You've
got to make it worse. You've got to hit that rock bottom moment where he's gone, you know what? I've lost my dog. I've been bitten by a snake. My feet are all cut up.
Yeah.
I've got no hope for food.
Yeah.
Should
I give it in?
Yeah, this is too much. I can easily just, I don't know. Maybe he sees like a cliff or something. He's thinking, I could just crawl over and jump off that cliff.
So whilst he's standing near this cliff, we kind of maybe get some sort of flashback to him being in a suit and coming down for breakfast, and he's got a wife and a child.
Oh, of course.
And the child, and the child is there, and on the news there's something about a lightning bolt from the space, right? Zapping a tower, like it's the same idea as Radius. And, they're not sure what's happening. There's a lot more lightning in the sky than there ever has been,
Yes.
And things are getting zapped and fires are starting and the police are doing their best. And, of course, it's an indication society's at a bit of a precipice. And he has a touchy moment with his child.
Yes.
Maybe the child's trying to do some maths or something, or mum's being a bit narky to the child, and he just has a nice father-daughter moment. And it's with that he remembers that he set off on the journey to look for that child, that bleeding child. So he's for maybe in the flashback, his child says, you always look out for me, and he'll be like, yeah, I'll always look out for you.
Oh, yeah, I'll look
Daddy
out
will always look out for you, And so he was on the edge of the cliff, but he decided, he's now got a bit of gumption to, no, I'm going to find that child. Even with a snake bite and no resources and a hunting party.
And he's about to...
I'm going to do it.
He's looking down the cliff on the rocks downstairs.
Yeah.
And then he thinks he sees the child is down there walking out.
Yeah.
And this is where we've bounced off rock bottom.
Yeah. And maybe that hunting party is heading that direction. He can see them.
Oh, yes, he can see
them. So they're actually heading for the child.
Oh, no.
Not him, but they're after him. And so he's like, well, I could just kill myself and who cares? But no, he's got the gumption. So then he's got the gumption. So this takes us into Act 3. Act
3 is where he gets a bit of a plan.
Yeah.
So he notices there is a way to climb down.
Yeah.
And so he sees there's a way of climbing down, and he can see across the way there's like one of these suspension bridges over a gully ahead. And he thinks, if I can grab that child and get across that bridge, I can then like cut it, and then we'll be safe from the marauders. And I think I see some forest over that side or something.
So there's growth to hide.
He's got a bit of a plan of action, because it's important at Act 3 you've got to have that action plan, because as the audience you're getting picked up from that rock bottom moment as well.
That's right.
And he rushes down there, grabs a child, and runs to this bridge. But you see, it'd be too easy if he could just cross the bridge. And then cut it, and then he's home free. End of movie. That's too easy. It's cheap.
Yeah.
And he's not learned anything. So instead, he'll get to the bridge, and at the bridge, all along, is the adult whose tracks were with the child's. And it goes, oh, looks like you've found my child. And the child is suddenly frightened. And then two other bad guys, and you realise they're actually part of this other group that's chasing there, but had been escorting this child and had chased it ahead of time. So now we've got this reversal where victory has been snatched away, and here he is faced with this decision. What can I do? How can I rescue this? And now in my head, I'm not entirely sure how he's going to do that. But he's got to look back and go, those wild people were really crazy ass, and then the nice people seem nice, but they turn out to be quite bad. And so he, in fact, goes, oh, hey, actually, and he invokes the name of the leader, the great leader, has really gotten onto something here. Let's take this kid back, and we'll both be heroes, and you won't get in trouble for letting the kid escape in the first place. And it's at this point that they have a quick physical struggle, and the guy manages to lose his own arm, gets chopped off. Yeah. Because he has to make that decision. Do I grab the child and hold on because she's about to fall down the cliff? Yeah. And he does, but he loses his hand. Nonetheless, he manages to get free and cross over the bridge. And so as the audience, you see he's decided that he's going to be a bit selfless about this. He learnt from the dog's sacrifice, and also remembered his vow to always protect his own child.
And I think that child should say something in that moment there of like, well, are you going to protect me? Like the same repetition of what the daughter would say. And then, so it's like, okay.
And then we have the closing image, and I like this closing image. I've just come to me, similar sort of drone shot. It starts coming up towards, them, and then it comes in close. So you get a nice sort of intimate, and it comes down, and we get a close flyby. And there he is walking along, one-handed, of course, holding the child's hand now, walking side by side, whereas previously he's been followed by a dog in an empty landscape, holding the hand of the child with a close shot, and they start walking across some green grass.
Yeah.
There we go.
And maybe their footprints would go from the sand but then disappear onto the green grass or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. See, and that leaves you go, he's had his adventure. He's learnt and grown something.
Yeah.
He lost something, but he gained something. And we have, so each point has driven this story forward so that you get to the end and you're like, okay.
You're satisfied.
We're going to make that film.
Yes.
Or someone else can make that film. We'll just watch it and then do an episode about it.
It will take some royalties, I think.
Obviously, royalties.
Writing royalties, please.
So
jinx and jinx and jinx. You can't talk anymore now. till someone says your name, that kind of thing. No, we'll get stuck into Radius and go through some of those beats, some of those key bits that we've just explained there, but from Radius, and also pick on some of the other film language and that. So I mentioned before, the start of this film is really fast-paced. I think probably in that opening minute, you know, there's a bunch of flashes of a crash of a man getting out of the crash, or stumbling down the road, this dirt track, bleeding. A lot of that camera is, you know, very oblique, or, you know, on the angles or side, upside down, I think,
and
really quickly.
I love the opening image of this, which was, it was quite quiet, and then we just have like... it's a close-up of a closed eye in the dark.
Right. That's it, yeah.
Closed eye in the dark. And then we start getting some of the flashes, and he gets up. And because there's a closing image, which is very similar to this, of course, but alternate. And I love the imagery of closed eye.
Closed eye, can't see.
Darkness, closed eye, and this sort of nighttime crash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great quick sequence, and it doesn't slow down from there as a pace of the editing, because we kind of, you know, as he stumbles out and goes along this road, he's bleeding. We see a car and he signals him. You know, you might be like, oh yeah, he's going to get some help, and this car then indicates to pull over, but then just slowly veers off the road, and there's this young woman dead in the driver's seat, you know, which, okay, well, maybe that's what happens. And he grabs her mobile and calls 911, and it's very distorted, like he's struggling to connect to them. And with that, a crow falls out of the sky, one of these birds that you seen, whacks the top of the car. And, you know, he's quite baffled by it all. And, I mean, we know the premise, so we're kind of like, well, yeah, you're killing everything, dude. You know, but it's interesting to see how are they going to visually show us this.
I loved the way it was so quickly into that.
Yeah.
There was no slow build-up of it. It was just like... It's one of these films where it's just, okay, here's the premise, deal with it, let's move on.
Yeah, then we'll know what happens next.
The movie wasn't about him discovering he's got this effect.
No.
It's just like, no, the effect is here, it's established. The first 2 minutes, we've killed a lady driving a car and a gentleman crow flapping past minding his own business.
That's right. And then it ups the stakes, because you're saying it's fast, because then it ups the stakes because he kind of then he's wandered down this road and come across a diner, and, you know, he opens the diner and it's just everyone is dead.
Yeah,
you know?
They just drop dead.
You know, he kind of is really, again, extremely baffled, looking around at, well, what's going on? And at this moment in time, he's thinking, oh, is it a viral or something in the air? So he kind of runs into the woods and puts a cloth around his face, because is it some sort of airborne virus or something like that?
Looks up his own driver's license address.
Yeah. Yes, and then heads in that direction.
Yeah.
So it's a great, really just intro, you know, first couple of minutes, and there's so much happened.
So does he save the cat? Like, so which part of that was, because you've got to establish if he's going to be the hero, the protagonist that we're supposed to barrack for.
Well, okay, yeah. When he comes out of the diner, there's a car coming, and he actually waves like something's wrong, and then the guy's dead.
Yes.
So he does kind of save it there. I think that then once he's at home...
his immediate call of 911 saying he's not saying, I've been in a car crash.
No.
He says there's a woman dead.
There's a woman dead, yeah. And he, as I said, I think he tries to warn that driver, and then within a couple of... I think it's then about 5 minutes into the film, we have the farmer, and he's trying to warn the farmer, you know, so... I think there's kind of 3 or 4 moments of saving the cat there, isn't it? You know, he kind of continuously tries to save the cat.
Yeah, we can see that he's clearly concerned for other people and not so much for himself.
Yeah. He, at his house, he kind of seals everything up. With cloth, he uses gaffer tape. And we have this great thing of the farmer, and there's a newsreel now happening where... And we sort of only hear a bit of it. Like, I think he watches it and it's talking about the diner, and the police are a bit, you know, they don't know what's really happened. They think it's maybe terrorist attack. And so, yeah, we do have him see the farmer. So across the road, there's a harvester.
Yeah, tractory thing.
Yeah, and...
if you're from Manitoba, you probably know exactly what it is.
We're not farmers where we are, even though we're not far from farming in Mandurah, but I'm not a farmer, so I don't really know. But it looks like a harvester or a tractor of some type. Anyway, this farmer's there, and he kind of signals to him, and of course the farmer comes towards him.
Yeah, what's going on?
Which is fine at that point, but we know as the audience, and he writes a note saying, danger, or get out,
go
home, or whatever. And the farmer kind of stops and stares, and he's fine. And then he takes like another step, and he's dead.
Just drops in his tracks right there.
And I think that is really like the inciting incident in a way. It's leading to it, isn't it? Because there's a bit of a connection there that they're getting close to him. That's the filmmaker saying the radius. So it's not the inciting incident, but then he goes outside and he tests that idea, doesn't he? Because he sees the crow.
Yeah, he sees the crow in the garbage bin.
He thinks back to probably the crow falling out of the sky or whatever, and so he starts walking slowly towards the crow, and it's a great sort of tension building scene because he's like, how close do I get to this crow? Will it or won't? And of course he gets close enough, and it does. It carks it.
And he drops it, marks it with his handkerchief.
Yep.
Because he's gone, this can't be a disease. That's not a virus. Viruses don't do that.
No.
He drops his handkerchief there, and that's where he sort of goes to measure it out. And he measures the distance to, like, I don't think he actually measures the distance to the dead farmer, but he does.
No, he doesn't.
He walks over and looks at it and looks back, and you can see he's going mental.
It's about the same.
Thoughts. And interesting, there's a few interesting details here. He's a landscaper.
Yep.
He has a landscaping business, and he lives on his own. So that's sort of at first okay. It's a bit odd that he's in this nice modern home and all the rest of it, and he's a good-looking bloke and by himself. And there's no indication that he'd had a breakup or anything.
No.
And he has a landscaping business.
Yeah.
And it all makes sense later on. Like at the end, very end, you just go, oh, okay, well, yes, having a landscaping business where you're getting about with a truck and tools all the time, and I suppose that helps. But I was going to bring up a couple of the themes that they sort of show in this, which is quite good. So they do have him walking, and we talked about a drone shot in that earlier sort of fake film. In this one, he walks away from the dead woman, and we do have that drone shot that shows him up all by himself at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And this is the classic dirt crossroads where the devil comes to sign his deals. Right. Yeah. And I sort of thought and went, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if they're going with that.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other spots in the film where they do have a crossroads and crossing railroad tracks.
Yes. And bridge. The bridge as well.
Areas of moving over and, symbols of this sort of choices and changes in life, which was quite good. The inciting incident here, I think, it's sort of, is it that point where he goes, oh, there's a bit of a radius.
Yeah, there's a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. Like when I get close to things, they die.
And I think the bit where it really changed gears and went, because you're still sort of going, okay, so how's this going to progress?
Yeah,
is when Jane turns up.
Yeah, but that's a bit later. I don't think that's the inciting incident. Because I think the inciting incident is him realizing. Because after that, then it's like the cops come around, and he's like, oh god! So he like runs to the shed and he stays back, and
then all those pigeons drop
dead, just at the last minute, and so again, asking your question, save the cat. Like the inciting incident to me is that crow scene.
Yes,
because it's like him going, oh crap! Anything that gets 15, 20 meters, whatever it is, to me, dies. So then what am I going to do about that? So then his answer to that is go to the shed because it's the furthest from the road.
Yeah.
Remember? And
it's far enough away from the house.
Yeah. So that's kind of like if people come to the house, I'm okay. But of course, this cop starts coming and the dead birds fall out.
I'll just investigate this shed over here. Yeah. Luckily, the birds all died and the cop went, let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah, and so they did. The cops go, and then to me, it's like when Jane rocks up. It's that great example of the B story because she is kind of the B story. Their relationship is the B story.
Yeah,
because their relationship is actually something different than what you kind of think. So it's a really cool way of, in films. Oh yeah, hot guy, good-looking girl. Well, they're going to get it on, and they even say. Do you notice they said the line? Because they start talking about they have no memories, they don't know each other, but he says, but I feel like I do know you.
Yes.
Or I feel comfortable around you. So it's like, that's very typical. We talk about writing romance. It's like in a Hollywood film, these two random people are going to get it on.
But it's also
a little bit, but it was because, but then we learn what their relationship is.
And if it wasn't a death radius, it could almost be the start of a rom-com because his house is devoid of femininity.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there's only a photo, like it's a bit stark. It's just a photo of a kid.
Yeah.
And she says, "Oh, is that you?" And he's like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
And I think that's a really. Why would you have just a photo of yourself by yourself in front of this house?
Yeah.
It's weird, but then again, when you start looking at what the ending is, it's like, okay, it probably is him by himself, showing that he had a lonely childhood. Like he did not. That's not a happy childhood.
No,
whereas just kind of look a slightly bewildered looking child by himself in front of a house is like, okay, that's a bit weird.
So she rocks up, and of course he wants her to stay away. And there's that great moment. He's in the shed, and he's like, "Stay away." And she's like, "But I just want to talk to you." And you can hear her getting closer. And but then she does get closer.
Knocks on the door.
She knocks on the door. So it's like, oh, maybe this weird radius thing is not over. Or maybe it's over.
Yeah,
it's fine.
And the little dog.
That's right. And then the dog comes in to really justify, no, you're okay. Yeah. Everything's okay. It's actually not just Jane.
I want to know if that's actually Caroline or Steve's dog.
Yeah, it probably is.
Because it's a cute little dog.
It was a cute dog. So she's got amnesia. As you just said, she looks around the house and he's like, well, there doesn't seem to be any women stuff here. I don't think we were together. But that's what I mean. They say that kind of cliche of, oh, but it feels right to be together.
Yeah.
And that's a good typical Hollywood
and
starting
so I
point.
thought this was definitely in Act 2 here, where we're exploring this premise of the amnesia and this relationship and what does that mean for the death radius?
So they have a flash. This is sort of the first flash, isn't it? So they have a flash of the bridge, is it? The sign at the bridge, or is it
picking her up at the bridge?
That's right. So he has a little memory of it. That's right. They're in the kitchen. He has a little memory of the sign at the bridge. And so they head to the bridge. He's like, let's go to the bridge.
And I love that here. This is one of those areas I was looking at framing of the characters. So it was distinctly a shot of Jane talking inside the car. Yeah. You got the A pillar of the car, that front bit. And so she's a little bit blurred behind the window, A pillar, and then very clear outside. Yeah. And there's nothing going on there, but it's moving past very quickly. Yeah. And then they have him talk, and instead of, because you could easily have had a shot of the two of them talking, it's the other side. Yeah. Him blurred by the window, A pillar, and then the road and cars driving past, like establishing, definitely, things are moving on. Yeah. These two, they're in the car together, but they're not together. Like there's still a separation because we're not seeing them. They could well have filmed it separately. Yeah. As far as I know, they were each individually in the car by themselves.
I also found that shot you're just talking about, it was a really clever way of showing that they're together, and the rules of this movie, we'd set up, if he's on his own, everything dies around him. But together, we know they don't die. But in that car scene, we see the cars come by. And so my filmmaker brain straight away went, oh, is one of those cars going to veer off and crash? Yeah, but they didn't, right? They all went by. I think 3 cars went by, and I'm like, so the rule now is if they're together, nothing is probably dying. So it was a very clear way of sort of showing us that.
And again, it's almost a romantic setup, isn't it? It is. It's like together they're safe or they're happy or whatever.
That's right. And so they do get to the bridge. I mean, she's talking about not knowing anything. And she also says that, well, she went to hospital, but they couldn't show anything out of the ordinary.
She tells her story about going to the mall and Santa.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Pulled the beard off Santa and she freaked out.
Yes. And then with that, she sees that on the bridge she had a bit of paper.
Yeah.
But can't see what the paper is.
And so I'm wondering what was the point of the Santa little story? Because that was a definite little story there that she remembered, and I think maybe it's a foreshadowing of Santa is, hear me, I was
revealing,
seeing that, here's this guy, he's helping me out. We're
seems
friends.
to be a nice guy.
tug the beard down.
And he's actually a monster.
It's not a nice guy under there. Well, I don't know, maybe the Santa guy was a nice guy, but it wasn't Santa.
Well, for a child, it was scary.
Yeah, it was not Santa.
It wasn't Santa, yeah.
No, yeah. So, they go back to the crash site because they've got no other leads to go on, and this is where we see the big blackened circle.
This big charred circle.
This was nice too because it wasn't charred. It was just black.
Yep.
Everything in there was just black. There's still leaves, there's still bits and pieces, and it wasn't all crunchy. And it was just, and I think that was important because it's like if it looked like a burnt out site, you could kind of, it feels more normal. But this was something
very eerie. Yeah,
something different and weird happened here. It was
like
weird.
A perfect circle.
Perfect circle.
You know, probably playing off the idea of crop circles, maybe. You know, like that was kind of the connotation there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And also, what does a circle represent? Like, you know, like it comes around, it goes around. A
completion.
It's a completion thing
cycle,
again, yeah. So very... Does he reveal that that he kills, that things are dying around him
Well,
here?
yeah, this is... So he is standing at one side and says, you know, where were you?
Yeah,
and
that's
she
right.
is on the
sort of demonstrate.
other side, and he's like, you know, we're on either side of this circle. And it was... At that point, he reveals, stuff dies around me.
Yeah.
And she freaks out and says, oh my God, are you going to kill me? And
That's
starts,
right,
and they have a bit of an argument up to the road, and she starts storming off as a policewoman pulls up.
Yes.
And says, you know, is there something going on? And they're like, no, it's all right. We're just like, please, sir, come away. And Jane goes,
she's storming down the road.
And storms off.
Pissy.
And then the cop dies.
Yeah.
Just stops.
Yeah.
And Jane, of course, goes, oh, holy crap.
You're telling the truth.
Yeah, this is real. And that's where they go. And we get that heartbreaking moment with the mobile phone. It's like, it said mum on it. And you hear,
Mummy?
Mummy, what's
Can
up?
I play with the Xbox, Mummy?
I'm going to take silence as a yes.
That's right. No, it was much creepier than that.
It broke my heart to hear
Mummy,
that.
you're going to bring home ice cream for little Benny?
I mean, they just had to add that in there just to really... Again, it was one of those tightening screws. It was just like, this is serious. This is not just fun and games.
Maybe that's why, because you could sort of take it a little bit more comically, maybe, you know, or a little bit more... Well, how serious is it? But identifying that people are people with families, you know, it's makes it more real, doesn't it? So, yeah. So... And so this is where he kills the goat.
Kill the goat
to demonstrate how far, to prove it. So if he walks up to, they're sort of arguing about it, aren't they? And then he's saying we should go to a doctor, I think, and she's saying, well, no, I went to the doctor, sort of, and so he demonstrates with this. There's a goat in the farm property, and they kind of walk there. Again, in that shot, there's a bridge, isn't there, in the background? So there's lots of bridges, like you were saying. There's lots of crosses of the roads. They're kind of, intersections or crossovers, aren't they?
Yeah, they're doing a lot of that sort of thing.
Yeah. So lots of motives in that way. So Liam proves to Jane that any living creature who approaches him dies unless Jane is within, I think they're saying 50 feet or 15 metres or something. So
yeah. They never say it in the film, but it's mentioned in like the blurbs for the movie. I guess it's
it's a way of defining.
It looks about right. Yeah, about 15 metres. They decide they're going to go to this hospital.
Yep.
And Liam does get a bit of a flash again of like writing in a book and drinking like in a cabin or something somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's sort of just a little flash we get. We don't see any more of that. And they go to this hospital like out of town.
Yep.
And they go up, and there's a bit of a tense moment where he's got to go in the CT scanner, and Jane is told that she's got to leave. Convinces the tech to let her be in the booth to watch.
And it was kind of a good moment, wasn't it? Because he goes into the machine. You're like, how far is that machine? Is the like there was a real deliberate. This is what's great, isn't it? Fun and games, because it's once you've set up properly, a scenario like that, like, is he going to be close? And that tech was just sitting there and it was really quiet for a moment. You're like, oh, is she dead?
Yeah.
Or is she about to die, So you can kind of keep twisting the screws, can't you, of the what if.
Yeah, and we're coming pretty close to the midpoint here. Not quite, but...
Not quite, yeah.
I think they...
We then have this...
They do that chase scene.
Yeah. So actually the doctor does tell him... that he's okay. The scan showed nothing.
Yeah, scans showed nothing.
Yep.
And then we get the missing persons posters and the separation and this amazing chase in the lift.
Yeah. And so Jane sees the missing person and flashes back to the bridge, and that's what she was dropping off the bridge.
Yeah, and it sort of looked like a picture of her was missing. And so you're thinking...
Oh, is she a missing woman?
Yeah, was she a missing person? And...
How did he know her?
Found her or something?
Yeah.
Like it was unclear there. And, I couldn't even quite see what the name was that was on there, but it's definitely not Jane or Rose, as it turns out.
And then we have this great chase scene where the police rock up to the hospital looking for them and kind of discover they're there, so they chase them. And they get to this elevator where she's separated. Surrey kind of detailed this earlier. There's people. He screams at them, but the door's shut. She runs down a level. He's already going down another level. You know, he looks out the elevator. She runs down another level. You know, he's not there, or the doors are shutting. And so it's really building this. You're like, oh, God, is half this hospital going to be dead at the end of this? Yeah. And they kind of miraculously at the bottom floor meet back up. And I suppose she'd run down the floors and kept with him enough that it didn't affect anyone, you know.
Not that we saw.
Not that we saw, yeah. And
poor old grandpa, he didn't make it. But it's unclear as to whether he caused that or not.
Yeah. And they sort of escape the cops that way and get out the doors. It reminded me a bit of like, I think, is it Terminator 2, how she runs through the hospital to escape Linda Hamilton and, you know, the guards and the cops, and it's just a real kind of...
And the two Terminators are moving in on it.
Yeah, you've got like different pressure points happening all in once, you know, but they just get out kind of by the skin of their teeth. So the filmmakers did really well to do that. And it didn't appear anyone died. I feel that then, the midpoint is this next bit where it's revealed that Jane has a husband.
Yes, her name is Rose.
Her name is actually Rose. And so they're really baffled because they've got no memory. She's got no memory of a husband. And she even says, well, what if this guy's not real? You know, like, what if this guy is made up?
I'm trying to get away from.
Yeah, like, what if I was trying to run away from him, you know? And I liked that. So it was a very, you know, again, clever way of the writers, not just, oh, safety's over here, your husband's over here. It's like, but hang on, I might be a missing person. Was I, like, running away from my husband, you know?
Yeah, and I had those same thoughts because you're still sitting there trying to piece this together. It's like... Because initially you're thinking, oh, they maybe they're friends or they're together, and then you find she's got a husband. You go, oh, that's a spanner in the works. You go, well,
I thought they were about to get it on. Come on, where's this twerking scene?
Yeah, were they cheating? In which case, it's suddenly that relationship. You go, oh, is that?
Yeah.
That suddenly these heroes, are they heroes or are they? Do they kind of get their just desserts by having a car crash?
Yes, that's right.
But instead, you sort of, you know, she raises this point. Well, what happens if he was trying to the one that she was escaping from, and then you kind of go, oh yeah, it could be that.
Yeah, so they go find her husband called Sam and try to convince him, and he doesn't really believe it. And again, he demonstrates under a bridge again. You know, keep showing bridges. Bridges bringing worlds together.
Yeah,
symbolically, and it's pigeons, and these poor little pigeons fall out of the sky again or whatever. So Sam agrees to kind of look after him. It's good, this bit, because the filmmakers don't follow Sam, and he has to take their car away and he has to go get them supplies. And what I like about that is, as an audience, you have no idea if he's on their team or not. You know, because he's very suspicious of this random guy rocking up. He also reveals that they had a lot of arguments and they weren't on the best terms.
And she finds the photocopy of the Lily wanted missing poster.
Missing poster, which is of her sister.
Yeah, and turns out and that's
really
the thing,
like
because you're looking at it going, Lily, missing, and that's where you're still going, is this guy a creep? Like, how come he's got this missing poster with her on it?
Yeah.
And he says, no, it's your twin sister, and you still kind of go, that's kind of convenient, or is it she really is Lily?
Yeah, is she
but
Lily?
Has been living as Rose?
Yeah.
And she's not sure if she should turn herself in or not, and that's where this is. And then you see the picture of the twins together, and you go, oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if that was they just photoshopped that.
I think they might have.
or like, you know, actually this what her name Charlotte has a twin sister that we don't know about. I think it's just Photoshop.
I think it's just a good old Photoshop.
Pretty easy
costume.
to do these days. So they do have that moment. Then also where we discover this, like Sam's been writing this bit notepad.
Yeah,
and she finds it, and it's like all stuff that she likes and doesn't like, and how they met, and like sort of memories to try and jog her memory. So you're going, oh, okay, Sam seems to be on the up and up. Like, she was depressed. They're having arguments, and she'd go away, and you kind of go, okay, that seems to check out a bit.
And they're going to, I think, is it Liam remembers that sitting there alone drinking in a cabin, and he has like a memory like that, doesn't he? That he has this cabin.
He has a cabin,
and he's on a boat. Yeah,
on the E1 road, and he's on a boat.
Yeah.
He's like, that sounds ideal for us to escape to.
Let's go there, and because we do see the authorities in the background are kind of really on the hunt for these two.
Yeah.
So Sam's not impressed with that plan, and he goes and gets the cops. And to me, this moves into that. It's a perfect all is lost moment where someone or something dies, and this film being all about death, well, they're going to have this huge elaborate scene that, it takes a few moments to unravel, as in Sam rocks up, the cops are there, it's clear they can't escape. And there's actually numerous cop cars, numerous people on the street.
What got me was initially it's just like the 3 or 4 cops in the shop itself.
Yeah.
And they take her out the back, and then they start taking me out, and you're going, oh no, like
if you separate them
these couple of cops are going to die.
Yeah.
But then they go out in the street, and
there's a whole bunch of
another
other cop cars.
And then you look around, there's people gawking with phones and filming.
I think there's media, isn't there? Journalists
heaps
or something.
of people there.
Yeah.
And that's when the horror realization comes in, and you just think, no, she's going to escape and run up just in time. No,
they all die.
The horror of it was that just this probably would have been 20 people or so. People just all dropped dead, which is, and I love it when filmmakers go there. Because a number of times, I know this was particularly during the 80s and 90s, you'd get a TV show or a film where they put this premise that, the world could end or there could be a massive invasion, and then like you'd never see it.
No,
it'd always be stopped.
It always ends right before it.
And you're like, and you never actually get there. The
perfect example is like the sort of the terrorist or the bomb. I'm going to blow this bomb up if you don't give me this. And then of course they don't give him that, but they don't blow it up either.
Yeah, it's something.
At the 9th hour, they're like, I'll give you one more hour.
Yeah, something ridiculous happens, and you're like,
blow up the building.
So I do love it when the filmmaker goes, like there's all these people here. Ooh, this would be bad, wouldn't it? Yeah, they're all dead.
They're all dead.
And how about that?
There's no turning back from that.
It reminds me of that TV show, The 100. There's a couple scenes like that where they're going to evacuate 300 people to make enough resources on the space station to live, and they're racing down there to try and stop it. And you're thinking, oh no, they'll get there. They'll get there. No, they just killed all these people, and you're like, and you go for no reason.
Yeah,
there was just for no reason. Yeah, it's just they went there, and it's good because it makes it awkward.
And it's a great tracking shot what they do there, because the cop comes out of the shop with Liam, and they're pulling. We're cut to pulling. Rose out the back, and so as an audience we know at some point, and we see Liam straining and screaming and telling no, put us back, and the camera, I'm pretty sure by memory, was then focusing on the cop coming sort of, he's a couple of meters behind the action, and with that his eyes just go over and boom. Because he's just hit that borderline, and the camera twirls around to reveal all these people around Liam have just bammed on the floor at once. And I think then the other cop inside is like, what's going on? Like, what's this commotion?
Runs over towards him.
And of course Liam's like, don't come, and boom, he's just, dead.
Yeah, I know.
And it was a real great kind of reveal of it all. I liked how the camera did that.
It pulls the rug out completely. It's just like, okay, they were going to go up to this cabin and somehow work it out, whatever that means.
But now they have to.
But now it's like, okay, this is just really the shit's hit the fan.
Yeah. It's dangerous to be around so many people.
Yeah, this is really bad. Yeah. And here, this is where they do get together and they rush off. Sam is like, I think Sam's realised he's just murdered all these people. Good intentions and all that, but hey, they did tell you that everyone would die, and in fact, everyone did die.
Yeah, so they take off, and Sam's going to be the bridge and try to speak to scientists, I think, and try to tell their story. They take off. Whilst they're heading up to the cabin, they are getting some supplies. Two things happen here. One, they see the TV says there was some sort of cosmic event.
Yes.
And it's just a big lightning bolt basically out of the sky. And they're like, oh, that hit really where we had the accident. So that kind of answers that is that wrath of God or Rider's hand or whatever that might have caused it, something from outer space. And then the second thing is they're basically followed by hunters. You know, you're like, oh yeah, these are going to be bad guys.
Because this is the thing is we're coming towards Act 3 here, where they've got a bit of a plan going. Yeah, they're going to head off, but I don't think we've quite got there because we've got to have that death first, which is where they get there to the cabin and they're talking about, what does the future look like? Yeah. How does this end? Yeah. And this is where Liam is introducing the concept that, he should probably have to die. Yeah. And this is that there's death of hope. It's like there is no cure for this. It was some cosmic event. And that's where he wanders off out to the boat to get away and think, I guess.
But I think the moving into Act 3 is that scene, Surrey, because it's kind of him saying, is the plan I die and she's sort of like, well, we'll stay up here in the cabin. Now, I think in a Hollywood film, this is where they probably would have sex. Yeah. Or, there would be implications that because they kind of have a drink and he's like, I probably have to die. And she's like, well, you don't have to die as long as we stay together, you know. And maybe this is where we live now. We live in the middle of nowhere and we won't affect anyone. And,
I think the Act 3 is when he goes out the back and she finds the book of missing people, and that's where everything changes trajectory. Yeah. And she has the gun. So then she goes, oh, okay, the plan then is she's got the rifle that was in there and confronts him and says, you're going to get my sister out of that lake. And
it's a great couple of emotional moments in those beats
especially where Liam looks and he says, is it true? Is it true? And you can see
he knows.
He just doesn't say anything. He just like...
The memory is obviously... They don't show us his memory, but his acting there is really strong that he acknowledges he knows what he's done. And when he was on the boat, he kind of, he's kind of just off with the ferries, but then he's like looking into the water. And there's some sort of
he throws that little eyelet
and it's like
into the water and it splashes and he goes, oh.
Yeah, there's a ripple. Yes. And that's that ripple effect, isn't it? And likewise, just before that, when she finds that book and, like, what's this book going to be about? And she opens it, it's all the missing women. Yes. And he's written stories. And, of course, she turns the page, and it's her sister. Yeah. And then he turns the page and it's her.
Her name, yes.
Yeah, is the next one. So it was planned all along. So it's kind of, so she confronts him with a gun. She wants him to get the sister. He kind of half walks into the water and it's obviously like, well, I can't, she's gone. We're not going to get her back.
And we have the reversal here, I think, which is when the rednecks turn up. Yeah. Yahoo, we got ourselves a terrorist.
Just beat him up, punch him in the face.
Yeah, come on, you
kick him in the balls,
Keeps telling his son is you're trying to make a new serial killer, aren't you? That's how you do it. You want to know how to turn someone into a serial killer? You treat them like that. That's what you do.
Yeah. So they have a confrontation scene and Liam tries to get away far enough to basically, so they just drop dead.
Yeah, I know, that's sad too, though.
Yeah, and at the same time, Rose runs and one of them shoots her, so she gets shot. So they're kind of dead by dissociation, the rednecks, and she's shot. So he grabs her and struggles with her, chucks her in the car, fangs it to the hospital. And, he's trying to support her as much as he can. They get him on the Guernsey. And as she's being rolled away...
I know. I was looking at that going, what, you can't...
He's just standing still. And it's like, well, he won't be able to go into surgery with her, will he?
Yeah, what's going on here?
Yeah, so, and then with that, he shoots himself.
He pulls a gun and shoots himself. Yeah. And the close image was, again, like him, his eye, but his eye is open this time. Eyes open this time, yeah. Yes, and it's light outside. Like, it's light in the hospital. So, and that's... It was at that point there where I felt I'd watched a good movie. Yeah. Like, so there were parts in there I was sort of thinking, oh, this probably could have been a short film. Or I was sort of going, that dialogue didn't land quite so well. Is it like a lot of the direction and the camera work was really good, like the framing and this use of these crossroads and bridges and water and things. I was kind of enjoying that.
Yeah.
But overall, I was getting towards the end going, it's just kind of, nah, and then he goes bang, falls down, closing image. I went, yes, nice. I do love a redemption story.
I do too, and I mean it's really great bookends. And I think the thing is, like hope and also meaning of, the fact that he was, if you take then the story as a whole at the end, you're like, oh, he was a serial killer. He was a really bad guy. He gets zapped, doesn't remember his past, becomes a good guy, really.
Yeah.
But he's got this awful condition where everything dies around him. Probably the dream of the serial killer.
Yeah, well, it was.
It was what he was almost trying to do, wasn't it?
I think it was
Kill
like
everything.
it was a realization, the visualization of his prior life.
Yeah.
His prior life was that there was a radius of death around him.
Yeah.
And, wherever he went, people died.
Yeah.
But then this sort of was like, okay, well, forget about everything that happened. Now we're going to show you what it is that you do, what your life is. Your life is everyone who comes close to you dies. And the only stopping of that is your latest victim. Like when you're stalking your latest victim, no one's dying.
That's right.
And then, when he's confronted, he's kind of like clean slate. He's confronted with this. He goes, well, I don't want to do that.
No.
That's not cool.
No.
Which is nice. It's nice to think that. And that's why I think it does end with that hope where all the way up until then it's kind of, experiment, I suppose, whatever. But then somehow killing himself is a hopeful act because it's like, he learned his lesson. And this is where we say, the hero has to find that lesson in his journey to overcome the final barrier. And this was it.
He could have been a total super badass villain with that power.
Holy crap, yeah.
Serial killer. I'm a serial killer. Well, guess what? Anyone that comes within 15 feet is going to die. Walk into a huge city, just start killing millions of people, right? But he didn't. He wanted to save people with that fresh slate, So I see hope in there quite a bit. And the fact that then he does the ultimate sacrifice to save Rose and everyone at the end.
Yes.
So that brings us to the end of those key plot points. What did you think? Did we miss any bits? Is there anything you would add, or is there a moment in there that you thought stood out and maybe something that we didn't touch on? Let us know. Let's circle into then Act 3 of the podcast and just summarize up a couple of our key points of the film and do a bit of a dive into the science with Surrey and what do we think about it. So to kind of wrap up, we always like to say, well, hey, you should watch this film maybe with a couple of others. You've watched this now. What can remind you of some other sci-fi that we've looked at? So for me, Surrey, I think a little good trilogy here would be I Am Mother, The Platform, and then Radius. So I kind of think that as my trilogy would be quite a good one. They're all a bit mind-bending. They've all got interesting twists in them, and they're all, even though and probably I Am Mother is maybe not the darkest. It still is quite dark once you realise
when you really think about the whole ending.
Actually think about the experiment that is the robot and his mother. It is actually quite dark, and then a good old Platform is creepy and dark and all that. And I think this film, when you really think about it, it's quite horrifying. So
and I think the Platform,
these three
is another one of those ones that I watched and it finished and the closing credits and I had just like a feeling. I could feel something. I was like, I liked that film.
Yeah, I do.
Like, there's some films that you watch, like Die Hard. There's this great action sequence, some tough guy moments and stuff, and you get to the end, you go, that was a real ride. But some of these films, and I think this film, Radius, is one of them where you're watching the film through, and there's little bits in there that you go, oh, that's pretty cool, that's interesting, that's nice. But it's when it ends, and you sort of go, oh.
Yeah, the ending is what actually sort of smacks you in the face, doesn't it?
I really like that film. Yeah, so, and that was it for me. And so my triple play here, it was Awake.
Yep.
Because, again, that likewise was a film that it was going along, and there were points where I was going, where is this going? Is this going post-apocalyptic? Is this going, I'm not entirely sure where it's going. And it finishes with kind of an ending that makes you go, okay. It's satisfying. They did that, but there's still all of this stuff going, that's a really thought-provoking. What what's the world going to be like after this? This is, you could almost, from Awake, you'd have a TV series out of that, couldn't you? Because you're going to have people who, how did they die and get resuscitated? And then there's going to be groups of people who somehow have stayed awake and they've like got totally mad or something. Very interesting. And then Old. Old is another one that you're watching through, and there's bits and a twist and turn, and
one, actually.
Identities of people are revealed. The surgeon who's shown as being sort of relatively stable and sane, intelligent guy. It's revealed actually no, he's sort of racist and he's losing his marbles.
Yeah,
and the woman, I loved the one who says, and make sure my smoothie has the calcium boost in it. Yeah. I've got a calcium deficiency. And you say, like, I bet you do. Yeah. You're just some precious, spoiled brat. Turns out, no, actually, she does have a real problem. Yeah. Yeah. So those three films there, Awake, Old, and Radius.
Yeah, awesome.
They sort of have similar feelings. Like if you watch those three, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, you'd be finished up going,
delicious.
You'd be feeling the whole time. It'd be great.
You'd have some strong emotions there, definitely, for sure. So anyway, out of all the films we've kind of delved into on Space Brains, there are suggestions, but maybe you've got your own and maybe even some other sci-fi that we haven't yet talked about on Space Brains. So let us know what your ladder is looking like and maybe what you would think or what you would recommend to watch as a palate cleanser. That could be the thing for Radius.
Gora.
Maybe you need to go the other way and watch something that's much happier or not so death-defying. So, but this definitely is a film that I agree with Surrey that you get, the ending is kind of what makes it all so satisfying. So, a punch in the face start and an ending that is really satisfying when you go on that entire journey and realise what that deeper meaning is.
Yeah.
I really did thoroughly enjoy Radius. So what kind of science do you want to pick on, Surrey, here? Because as we said, the writers don't really give us much in terms of the actual why it happened.
Well, no.
And even humans don't tend to walk around with the ability. It's a bit magical to be able to just kill anything that's 15 metres around you.
Oh, well, there was an interesting case, though, where some guys stole some radioactive waste in the hope of selling it to terrorists or using it. But you see, they didn't have any shielding. They figured that the waste itself was shielded, and it was a little bit. They recovered the stolen waste because the thieves were all dead. There was like a trail of dead bodies, and then a couple of them sort of end up abandoning the truck and running, and they had burns and the teeth were falling out. It was just like sort of similar, but no, I'm not going to go. So you could maybe sort of think maybe some sort of radiation, but then how would the woman not get it? No, I'm more interested in the case of this Liam character who was a serial killer. Mm-hmm. He's killed numerous women, missing people.
Yep.
I think they were all women.
Yeah.
It's common for serial killers to do that.
Yeah.
But then he sort of becomes a good guy basically through having his brain wiped.
Okay.
And being exposed to
this horror.
I think. So the question is there any scientific evidence to indicate that psychopaths, like a serial killer, if they had their past cleansed and they were sort of given certain experiences, would they in fact not be a serial killer? In fact, dislike the concept of being a serial killer.
Uh-huh.
And we have an actual case study. This is interesting.
And it's not a lobotomy?
No.
Or it is a lobotomy?
No, lobotomies actually are more likely to cause psychopaths than cure them, oddly enough. So there's this character named Jimmy Fallon.
Oh, yeah.
Not the one you're thinking about. Professor James Fallon.
Okay.
Of the University of California, Irving.
Jimmy Fallon, if you are out there, we'd love to have you on the show.
Yes. Even though you are a psychopath.
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
Which Jimmy Fallon are we talking about?
So James Fallon, he's a neuroscientist at the university, and he's studying brain scans. So he's got a whole bunch of brain scans from prisoners and inmates of the correctional facilities and non-inmates. And he's looking through, he's gone, I'm a genetic absolutist. He believes that your genes basically dictate large portions of your behavior. And so he's going, I'm looking for a way of identifying psychopaths based on brain scans.
Right.
So he's got all of these things, and he's gone through 70 of them, and he's picked out. He's gone, these 30, I think, are psychopaths. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, in fact, he's right, not 100%, but it's 90. He's right up there. He's gone, yes. That is the brain scan of a psychopath. That's what it looks like.
Yep.
And so he turns over to his next research project, which is Alzheimer's. He's studying Alzheimer's patients. And he's got a control group, which is, in fact, his family. And so he's looking through the brain scans of these guys and go, yeah, okay, making sure that they're not have Alzheimer's.
Right.
And he gets to the last one, he looks at it and goes, oh, that's a psychopath. Like, I've just done this massive study and definitively identified psychopaths. And he goes, that can't be right. Like, I know my family. I don't have any psychopaths in my family. Although, actually, one of his uncles or grandparents was, accused of murdering someone at some point. And he's actually related to Lizzie Borden of the axe murder fame.
Right.
Although there's some question as to whether Lizzie Borden did it or not. But anyway, so he de-identifies it. He goes, okay, I'm going to basically ruin my Alzheimer's study because it's all de-identified. It's randomized. He doesn't know who's, a brain scan looks like a brain scan.
Yep.
Undoes the coding and has a look to find out that it's his brain.
Oh, dear.
So the irony of the neuroscientist researching psychopaths, and he's gone, I have just identified this pattern in brains, this lack of activity in this prefrontal area of the brain, which is where empathy and emotional processing and impulse control is kept.
Yeah.
He goes, well, I don't know that I'm a psychopath, so that's okay.
You are a
there are some more things. So he gets a DNA test.
Yes.
Because he knows that there's additional markers here, which it's actually not just the brain scan. He goes, there's this MAOA gene,
right,
which if you got that, you tend to be prone to violence, poor inhibition, and criminal behavior. Basically, people with that gene turned on are far more likely to be in prison. And if you have that gene and the psychopath gene, you're a serial killer. That's what he's saying.
Mix the soup.
So he does his DNA check. He's got that. And so he's looking going, oh, this is quite confronting because clearly, like, he's married, he's got a family, he has social circle, he's a respected professor at a university. He's clearly not a serial killer.
Well,
and so he,
his students may beg to differ.
The funny thing is, he spoke to his wife and he said, "Oh, look, I've just got this result from my studies. It says I'm a psychopath." And he said that his wife was like, "Oh, that makes sense." And he's like, "What?" And he confronts his family, and his brother says, "Yeah, that tracks." And his whole family sort of go, "Yeah." And that's when he thought about it and looked and went, "Well, it's not." He's like, "I never let the grandkids win." So, like, I noticed that other adults let, like, the little kids win the games.
Yeah.
I never do. I prefer to stay home and watch the football game than go to my, auntie's funeral. Because, I wanted to see the results of the match.
Yeah.
So, that's a lack of empathy there. Because normal people would say, even if I didn't like the auntie, the rest of my family does. I'm going to go and
the auntie's already dead anyway.
I'm going to respect my family and their feelings and do the right thing. But he didn't. So when he started to actually look at these things, going, actually, yes, I do display a lack of empathy, and he found though that he doesn't have the violent tendencies, but he realized that he really likes winning debates. Like he felt really compelled to prove his theory of psychopath brains. And he's realized that his psychopathic, violence and murderous tendencies is really just in he's very competitive to a fault and a bit annoying, and he's a jerk, and he will argue with people. But he says, I've never hit anyone or murdered or raped. Like, it's like clearly there's something different here, and this is where he had to actually swallow his pride and say, well, I was wrong. We are not genetically determined, because he had a look then at the psychopaths in prison, and they almost to a person, they all had abusive childhoods, head trauma, environments that exposed them to crime and violence and terror. And so he's like, oh, okay. Whereas he was an only child for a while at the end of a string of a lot of miscarriages. Right. So when he came along, he actually got a lot of attention and a lot of love because he was particularly well valued as like a miracle child after all of this struggle. Yeah. And so he goes, well, okay, well, there's a difference. Like I actually had a loving and inclusive home, definitely no abuse or neglect. Yeah, I was encouraged and obviously channeling my impulses into learning science. And his desire to discover secrets and be the ones that. And the interesting point here is, so that's great. So he's not a serial killer. Mm-hmm. So we can say that it's actually his experiences. So if you took Liam, let's say Liam, and wiped out all of his experience regarding that led to, perhaps the reason there was that photo of him alone as a child is kind of like, because he had a neglected childhood and he had trouble and, wipe all that out. And now we expose him to these sort of forces where he's hurting people. He can see it and he doesn't like that. Mm-hmm. I think it also did give him quite a lot of empathy, but not every serial killer is a psychopath. Some of them are kind of driven to it through their various problems they've had. And it's interesting that talking to Fallon, this is like about 2013, he's like saying, well, the interesting thing that I've learned out of this is now he's actively trying to be a better person. He's going, well, since his experiences and he's realized a bit of a jerk, he's actively paying more attention to what he thinks, what would a normal person, what would my wife do? I'll do that. And he said, don't make any mistake thinking it's because I want to be a good person. I don't care about that. But I don't want to be wrong. I don't want people to say he's a psychopath and he can't change when I have just proven that in fact it's your experiences that make the difference. So I'm going to purposefully prove that I'm right. So it's actually his psychopathic nature that is driving him to want to prove everyone that he can appear normal. But it's interesting that he does, reiterate. He says, like, I'm not being nice because I want to be like, I don't feel like I should be nice. Like I don't have that feeling that it's an important thing. Yep. Except I think it's important because it's what normal people do, and I want to be the person whose family has a good husband, has a good father, and people go, he's really good. Like, so it's his ultra competitiveness as opposed to his niceness. But at the end, the people around him appreciate it. Yeah. They go, oh, this is great. He's not doing this. He doesn't care really too much one way or the other, but he's putting the effort in, and that makes a difference. It does. Yeah. So I thought that was a really great story, and there's a documentary about us. I actually saw it on an airplane once, but it's also written up in the what's that magazine called?
Scientific American.
Gosh, no. Normally it's Scientific American, isn't it? No, this is the Smithsonian. Smithsonian have a nice write up about it. There's a bunch of other research done there by other researchers. Rain, what's their first name? I can't remember. A Rain released a very interesting study regarding different causative and correlation of factors for violent behaviour, and it comes down to this behaviour. So that's another good reason to be nice to your kids, because you never know. And I'm going to take not that I think it's important to be nice to my kids, but I'm going to try to, prove that this research was correct.
Me too.
Am I a psychopath?
Very interesting. So, the idea of Radius, I think, as a sci-fi film is a really good example of a low-budget, tight-knit science fiction story based on a really, really good what if. If you take this what if of what happens if a human has a death radius around them, and I think it's also like, who do you give that to? Who, as a writer, who would you give a death radius to? Yeah. If you give it to a serial killer, They're going to run into the city and kill as many people as they want.
Well, that's
if you
a different story,
their memory,
isn't it?
like could you change a serial killer? You know, so it makes it all the more juicy as a story. If Liam was just a normal landscaper,
yes,
it doesn't have that extra depth to it, does it? As a story,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't grab you. That ending, I'm not sure what you do in the ending there. Like you could still have him sacrifice himself to save other people, but it has no weight to it.
Doesn't have as much weight
because what has he really given up? What is and like what has he achieved through his death? Whereas Liam, the serial killer, what I really liked was that double edge, which was one, he's given up a life of hope and being a good person, but at the same time, it's kind of a punishment. He's accepting his past misdeeds and atoning for it.
Yeah. And like we always say, most of the time, the journey for the character at the end, at the climax of the film, they're really tested for what they have learnt on their journey.
Yeah.
And by the end of this journey, he knows his past.
Yes.
He knows he was a serial killer. He knows what he's done. And he could have, and then Jane is already dying, he could have just let her die.
No,
then he could go back to his old life, right?
That'd be a villain origin story,
yeah,
wouldn't
right?
it?
Yeah. But he could have. And this is the thing about story, is that we go on a series of plot points. The character can't just go along a bus ride. It's got to choose to ride the bus.
Yes.
And ultimately, the perfect metaphor of a story is like really the opposite of the character. So a serial killer that gets a death radius around him, yay, origin villain story.
Yes.
Or is he wiped clean and he's actually realizes that he doesn't want people to die?
Yeah.
And even when he knows his past, the past person that he was, he still doesn't want people to die now because he's gone on that journey.
Yeah, he's seen this effect. He's seen the emotional trauma that Rose has felt for the loss of Lily.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And these people around him that just drop dead, the realization of it. So he has learnt tremendously. So this is a real thumbs up, this film. This is a real little, sleeper, isn't it? Really?
I think so.
It's in the dark. More people need to know about this film.
It looks like a straight to video.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Like a made for streaming or a TV special. But
it's got a lot more going on.
The quality of the story and the direction of the camera work and so was really quite good. There's some very nice
stuff. There's motives,
sort of framing, editing. It's, and you get to the end, as I said, when his eyes were open and the credits rolled. Yeah, it was just again that eyes open compared to eyes closed. That's like if you're not paying attention, even you sort of go, that's really nice. Because I think I've said before in this, I do love redemption stories. Like that's one of my bits that that's what I really loved about Pitch Black. Yeah, was Vin Diesel's character's redemption from being a low life scumbag. We don't even know if he committed crimes or not. Like he was definitely in prison. Was he for a good reason or not? Who knows? It's not clear. He was accused of things, but we still don't even know what he was accused of. Killing some people, but he comes good at the end. And so you love it. And this serial killer, by the end of it, you're sort of going, I was barracking for a serial killer to win.
That's right.
And the only way you can get closure on that is that he died. And you go, it's so tragic that he killed himself, but at the same time, it's so appropriate that this serial killer took himself out. Yeah. So that he's not killing anyone else. It's just...
So brilliant story, right? Yeah. Like brilliant writing.
Fantastic.
If you want to be a writer, go check it out. So well done to the crew behind Radius. So that brings us to the end of Act 3 of our podcast and heads us into what we're going to do next time and what you should be doing for Space Brains. So first of all, if you haven't made a science fiction short film, do it. Submit to Space Brains Film Festival 2023.
We do music videos as well. So
we do music videos.
Do music video.
And you should be really in post-production right now. If not, panic.
Go
make it something really quick. There's still a little bit of time, but go do it. If not, if you're local to or you want to come to Mandurah and check out the actual event, it's going to be a cracker of a day. We're going to be talking lots about podcasts, science fiction writing, filmmaking, and looking at some great films. So just a really good day out if you're into science fiction film and all those other areas. If you are listening to us anywhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you do get podcasts, why not give us a rating? Why not leave a review? Or why not share to one of your friends?
Recommend us
to someone. So just, get the podcast out to more and more people.
Recommend us to Carolyn and Steve.
That's right. If you do know them, hit them up and let us know that we'd love to have a chat with them. And you can also check us out on all the socials and on our website. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. spacebrains.com.au.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to remember. So, and you can also message us, email us, and let us know what you thought. Next episode, we're going to lighten the mood.
Next episode.
And it is a classic because it's episode 95.
About time we lightened the mood.
Yeah, we've been very serious. It's all dark and, the time has come.
It's about time.
It is about time to lighten up the mood. We've done a lot of serious films. So for this classic, might surprise a few people out there, but this is a British science fiction film called
About Time.
About Time, yes.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it, go check it out. This is a great one. It's one of my, one of my wife's favourite film.
It's cool. I watched
great film
recently for a second or third time with my wife because it defies a couple of genres.
Yeah, it does.
And it works in nicely, and you're left off with a nice taste in your mouth.
It is, and Bill Nighy, who plays the father, is brilliant.
I love
in this.
him.
There's some great acting performances in this by all of them, but Bill Nighy. This is a film that I fell in love with Bill Nighy. So, it's a great film. It's a very comforting film. It makes you cry, makes you laugh. It's a great science fiction. And, of course, time travel. I always love time travel.
Time travel.
So I can't wait to talk about time with you next time.
It is about time to say goodbye. See ya.
Bye.